Hi everyone, I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and what I'm doing is bringing us all on the screen here. We've got everybody here, and hope this is going to work out okay. I can see that maybe the video is a bit jerky. I'm hoping the sound is going to be okay. So I want to introduce you to Lori McDonald, hypnotherapist, and she's been working with abductees and many other types of people and issues, etc. And I've had her on my show before. We had a wonderful interview. I think it was probably about a year ago, and it's on my YouTube channel for those that are interested. And we've got Jim SHEAHAN here, and he is a Vietnam vet, and we've quoted him on my website. Actually, in some ways, he is one of the reasons I'm doing the show. So what I want to do here is basically get the two of you to talk about yourselves briefly. Because we're starting late, I'm not going to do an introduction for each of you. I'm going to let you guys do it yourself. So Lori, do you want to start out and introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Lori McDonald, a clinical hypnotherapist here in Sacramento at Patriot Hypnotherapy. I'm the president of OPUS, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, a scientific consultant to the Edgar Mitchell Foundation Free, which is, of course, another way to offer support, gather information for the experiencer. I run and founder and the facilitator of the Sacramento Alien Abduction and Contactee Support Group. We have a couple of hundred members. We meet once a month, and we really move into deeper understanding of this particular phenomenon.
Okay, short and sweet. Now, Jim, why don't you introduce yourself as well?
Hi, I'm Jim SHEAHAN, and
okay.
As you said,
sorry, Jim, I'm sorry, but you've gotten really loud all of a sudden. You were fine prior to when we started, but I don't know what happened. But go ahead, continue.
Maybe I can talk softly.
Or if you just back away from your speakers, if you just back away, you know, you can always do that as well. That's okay. Better? Yeah.
How's that?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay. Well, as you said, I'm a Vietnam veteran, and for quite a while, I thought something more went on in Vietnam than I was aware of. And it went back to this movie, Jacob's Ladder, quite a few years ago, and it was about something the government was giving the troops. Well, anyway, that movie led me to believe something more that was going on, and then when I heard you, Kerry, speak about 4 months ago at a conference, things started to get triggered, and I was talking to another vet who had seen a live insect in Cambodia, a giant beetle type of insect, and saw some dead ones, he said recently. So I thought, what was unusual about my experience? And then I went to get regressed about that unusual experience with Lori McDonald, and that's my story.
Okay, thank you. And I think you have a mute button, both of you, in case there starts to get an echo. So if you hear other people talking and then you have echo, you can mute other people, yourself, when you're not talking, that is only. Okay, so it's really great to have you here, Jim and Lori, and it's kind of a serendipity, almost like a miracle, that the two of you connected. I didn't connect you guys. You somehow found each other, which is excellent. And what I would like to do at this point is, before we get into your story, Jim, why don't we talk a little bit to Lori? Lori, can you tell me, had you had anybody else approach you with this sort of story? Obviously, you're not going to, reveal private conversations with, your clients, but at the same time, within what you can talk about, what would you have to say?
I'm going to say that absolutely. I work with Vietnam vets quite often for post-traumatic stress disorder. And so we can see that there with stress and post-traumatic stress.
Laura, your sound is a bit quiet, so if you could turn yours up a little. Sorry to make you, to interrupt you here.
Okay, how's that?
It's a bit better, thank you.
Okay, so I do work with other Vietnam vets, generally for post-traumatic stress. Usually you can put your finger on where the stress originated. So say you were pinned down by fire and you couldn't get out, you're trapped, you're going to create a stress. If it's not resolved, that's post-traumatic stress, and we know why. But there's other type of stress that's underlying and you're not sure why you have it. You know something's not quite right and you can't put your finger on it. And it's very similar to the post-abduction stress. And this is what other Vietnam vets actually are suffering from. The reason is because they've been either subjected to some type of drug and had some type of psyops performed on them, or they actually, the reason is because they're subjected to some type of drug and had some type of psyop.
All right, that's very weird. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can. Sorry, I have more than one window going on here. I think that was my fault. Continue, Lori. I'm very sorry.
No problem. I think I was saying that when we see that there's a stress from an anomalous behavior, or there's some type of a screen memory, that screen memory has a lifetime. It will not hold in place if there's a catalyst, like an emotion pushing through to find out some unresolved answers. And so with Jim in particular, we did do a regression and we were able to move right into the appropriate brainwave, drifted right in between the delta and the theta brainwave. And we know this because we can see the physiological reactions in the body. And then his green memory, or the memory that was superimposed, that made it acceptable for his consciousness, dissolved. And truth then was revealed. And, you know, we see that in the phenomena as a whole, that there are all types of extraterrestrials or interdimensional beings and cryptoids as well. And so when you hear other people's work, like Brad Olson, who speaks on the giants, and we're looking at giants that were bones say anywhere to 25 feet tall. Now, we have to assume that whatever their natural environment is going to be in balance to that. So if we have skeletons where there were beings that were 20 to 25 feet tall, I would imagine that the insects at such a place would be extraordinarily large. And because there are certain areas on the planet that have these energetic ley lines, and we see what's on top of them are either some type of a pyramid, some other monolithic site, or a temple. So these temples are either maybe at a very particular place geographically, longitude and latitude, where the atmosphere might create some sort of a stargate or a portal to make it so that these can come through. Now, we know that there was a lot coming out of Vietnam. We see generals speaking of battles with aliens. We know that the code word in Vietnam was enemy helicopters for UFOs, because at that time, Vietnam didn't have helicopters that were war-worthy. And so they called them enemy helicopters, and that meant UFO. So there are some type of anomalous activities. I'm wondering if these UFOs weren't coming out to guard the portal where maybe some of the battles were happening. I'm very interested in Cam Lo at Vietnam. I'm planning a trip there right away here, and I'll be 8 weeks in Southeast Asia, and I will be going to the village, which was at the time supposed to be a DMZ area, but we know none of them truly were. but I'll hire a guide to take me into some ruins, actually, of a temple. So there's other Marine vets who have come forward, and they have a whole other story regarding just the temples. Now, I don't think that these were targeted to take them out to create some type of social disturbance in their belief system as far as religion goes, because the idea wasn't to retrain the population into a new belief system. So they wouldn't be taking out the temples for that. I can easily rule that out. I think that there is some other insidious interest in these temples. So they'll be my focus while I'm in Southeast Asia.
Okay, very fascinating. Sorry, I've got to leave. I'm gonna be muting you guys alternately, and we need to do that while we've got one person talking, so there's no echo. So what happens is, that's very interesting, because my understanding is that there are portals in temples. In other words, temples and churches are all built on portals. This is something we know. They're built on a convergence of ley lines that then create a vortex. And this is why they chose those sites. The early sites used to have ancient stone circles and things. Then eventually they built buildings on them, like the Dome of the Rock and so on and so forth. They're all on portals, every single one. What does that mean? This is true also, by the way, of military bases, which some people may not be aware of. Military bases have been built on portals. So churches, military bases, these are portals on portals. And what is a portal? A portal is an interdimensional gateway. It isn't always open, and it isn't always that accessible. So it can fluctuate as to what's going on there. But my understanding from Mark Richards, again, that is to some degree the reason I'm doing this investigation. And this is really an ongoing investigation, so people understand. We haven't reached a conclusion here, but he said something so unusual that I hadn't heard from anyone else. And then when I started to look back in the history of movies and books, and even recent books like Halo and Ender's Game and other ones, Earth Under Fire, and this other series going on out there by Scott, forget his name, I have it on my website, and other sort of sources, plus Starship Troopers, which I didn't even know about because I never saw that, all about incoming, an insect race doing battle with them, which was made years ago by actually a very well-known and a very well thought of filmmaker called Paul Verhoeven, a German director, interesting, and so on. So when you look back in the history, you start to see a lot of indications that what Mark Richards is saying about Vietnam may not be so outlandish. What he said was there's a lot of portals in the Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Southeast Asia, excuse me, area. So this all lends itself to that. And I'm gonna put on my mute button, if I can find it, here, and let you talk, Lori. So go ahead. You want to reply to that, and then we'll get Jim's opinion as well. Lori, do you? You have to take your, oh, I've got you muted. Okay, go ahead, Lori.
I can't hear you.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay, go ahead, Lori.
Okay, yeah, excellent. So yeah, the portals really draw my attention. Extraordinarily interested in them. I feel sort of compelled really to check them out. Ever since last September, when I was up at the SETI Ranch, I did see some fascinating UFO action there. Certainly not my first time seeing a UFO, but what was different there was the feeling of a vortex. And so I had been writing a book on the extraterrestrial interference, and I held back publishing it because I'm changing the first 5 chapters, because the truth is, I don't believe the conclusions that I had drawn initially. I'm not sure that the Greys and the reptilians and so forth are extraterrestrial at all. In fact, I think that, the M theory in math shows us that there, beyond a doubt, there are parallel universes. And I'm beginning to see that the parallel universes, as they form, they create these strings, and even though they're very similar, there are slight differences, and the difference could be in the dominant species. So if in a parallel universe a meteor didn't wipe out the dinosaurs, then a dinosaur would evolve, because they were very smart, they would evolve into the Draco reptilians. We see that there's a correlation between winged birds and dinosaurs with the hollow spine. Paleontologists who look at fossils say that there were dinosaurs that could fly. So it's not that big of a jump really to see that. Then the other common extraterrestrial, which I don't believe is at all extraterrestrial anymore, is the mantis being. And that is, again, just another insect from our own ecology, from our biology, that we see every single one of them, the ones that say they're Pleiadian, Nordic, Andromedan, all humanoid, or they're like the grays, an ant, right down to the sticky suction cups they have at the tips of their fingers. We have that in our ants. The grays are reported to have that as well. Too much of a commonality, you know, when we begin to look at this, then we see, not that I have any experience with experiencers who have had the Blue Avian experience, never have, but they look like ostriches. Their eyes totally represent the ostrich. From the neck up, you couldn't tell the difference. So once again, every single one of them begins to look like something that comes from our biology. So I think that the only extraterrestrials that have manifested on the planet are the ones that would appear more energetic, and I don't think they're extraterrestrials. I think they're celestial beings, which have a different frequency altogether. So for me, I couldn't finish my research because it didn't feel right. And then on further investigation, I really came to the conclusion that the majority, 5, 6, 7 of the major races that are being reported as extraterrestrial, I don't believe are at all. I think they're interdimensional. And I think that the extraterrestrial beings are completely different, in that once we begin to look into this portal issue, see these vortexes, and begin to figure out the clock. So we know that in 1968, that portal was open. We know that in 1999, there was a portal open in Israel. There's all of these different portals being opened at different times. And I think that as a researcher, you know, to me, I begin to see a puzzle. I begin to see the pieces of the puzzle coming together with the times, longitude and latitude. It creates a bit of a calendar for us to see which portals might be open. So I am totally psyched about hitting Southeast Asia, 2 full months. And I know that I'll be off the beaten trail. Might be a little, you know, adventurous for me, a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I think I'm up for the challenge. And in particularly, if we can bring anything back at all that helps with empirical evidence to shed some light on experiencers like Jim, who have had this in the mind and then a different memory overlapping it, and then figure that out and then come to the truth. Boy, if we could tell these guys, hey, this is what was really in the skies, this is what was fighting, it might give them a different perspective, give them a little bit of relief even, because maybe they thought they hallucinated things.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Very interesting. I do want to say that can you hear me okay when I have you muted? Lori, are you able to hear me? Okay. Okay, so good. So at the moment, what I want to say about all that is actually extraterrestrial and interdimensional are not even at odds with each other. They're actually the same thing. And I think a lot of people don't understand this. So if you can understand that in a certain sense, we already have multiple dimensions going on. And when you go from one level to another, actually planets are on a different dimension. So we're talking about dimensional travel all the time. And in fact, I think eventually people are going to understand that there is no other way of traveling. It's all interdimensional. And so this is how we live, and this is how the universe is constructed. And it's quite different, let's say, than what people think of in a linear sense. Because in a linear sense, you think that you go from here to the moon and you just go in a spaceship and it takes you X number of years. But if you go interdimensional, you jump from here to the moon, and you jump by bending space-time, and this is known, and you get there in a matter of minutes. You go through a portal. I've got witnesses that talk about going through portals. It takes a matter of minutes to get to Mars. Henry Deacon, Arthur Neumann talked about at length. He spoke at my conference. He talked to us behind the scenes, and he talked about going to Mars on a regular basis to work. He was working alongside other beings that are basically, we just call them extraterrestrial, just meaning that they're off Earth. So that's the terminology. It means it's outside of Earth the way we understand Earth, but it's because also we never understood that Earth herself is in many dimensions simultaneously. And so this is, it's a complex story. And I appreciate your investigation. I think you're on the right track. Now, what I want to do is go over to Jim. And Jim, you've heard us talk about this. I'd like you to talk about your experience and also kind of what you might apply to what maybe me or Lori has been saying here, if any of this makes any sense or it makes, to you in light of your own experience.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, I have to turn you lower, sorry. Go ahead.
It makes sense. So I'll talk about my experience. So the biggest unusual thing I remembered about Vietnam was being in the Marines in an infantry company, and we were up in the mountains along the DMZ, and at night we would set up on a mountaintop or a large hill. So we were on one hill, and that was Mike Company 3-3, and then on a neighboring hill was another company, Lima Company 3-3, and they had an all-night battle. And I could see the battle. I was put on a listening post down in the jungle in between the two mountains, and I was by myself, and I could see this battle, and I could see the gunships circling the mountain for almost all night. They were it was a gunship. It was shooting these. It had 50 caliber machine guns, 2 or 3 of them on there. And so they were just blanketing this whole hill for hours and hours. So there was a battle going on, and I could see the tracer rounds. Actually, it seemed like some tracer rounds were coming from what would be the enemy also. So that I have to say that. So then the next day, the battle was over, and our company, about 150 guys, we went down our mountain and climbed up their mountain and went through that battle site. And we went through, single file, 10 yards apart. We were quiet. And what I remember seeing vividly was a 12-foot pyramid of North Vietnamese bodies. And I thought it was 12. I remember remarking to myself that it was 12 feet because I looked straight ahead into the pile, and that's approximately 6 feet. And so that was just like halfway up. So I saw this huge pile, and when I looked straight ahead, I focused briefly, and I saw 2 mutilated bodies. One body had his foot in its mouth. His mouth had been deliberately cut open and the foot was inserted, and the other body was similarly mutilated. And one strange thing about it was I never remember talking about that with anybody. And it maybe a few weeks to a month after that, our patient got sent home, except for the guys that had less than 7 months in the country. So we were relocated to other units. So that whole unit, that whole thing got dispersed. But so I never talked with anybody about it, and that's strange. And I don't think I told anybody when I got back until some years elapsed, and I started talking about it.
Okay.
And
so you mean when you heard me? Do you mean when you heard me?
Experience with Laura.
Sorry, did you mean you didn't talk about it until you came to my conference, the conference where I was speaking? You can't hear me? You cannot hear me,
yeah,
Jim?
I did. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so you say
no.
You didn't talk about it until when?
I can hear you. No, I don't. It was broken up. I didn't hear everything you said.
Yes, the connection is getting quite bad at your end. I'm not sure why.
I started, it was about 20 years ago.
Hello?
You can hear me too good.
Okay.
At times. Can you hear me?
Well, you're breaking up. I'm not sure why. Maybe your internet connection. Do you have an unstable connection there, or is it perhaps you're being interfered with? I don't know which. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, my connection hasn't been bad.
All right. Well, sometimes this goes on. So what I'll do is at this point, thank you for that. I hope you can hear me okay. Can you hear me as I'm talking here? Jim?
Yes.
Okay, so at this point, you also ran into a fellow vet. Can you talk about his story? Can you talk about your friend's story, the person who doesn't want to come forward? Okay, a good way to fix this will be to close down the connection at your end, Jim, and come back on if you have to.
I'm kind of reluctant.
We can call you on the phone if we have to.
Doesn't want to come back on.
I think it's better if you try to log in again. Okay. So close down and come back in. We can call you on the phone if we have to. So while he's doing that, Lori, you obviously have regressed, Jim, and you said that he had a screen memory. Is what he's seeing there a screen memory? Is this what you understand?
Yeah, what he's describing, a 12-foot pyramid of Vietnamese piled perfectly with middle of the pyramid shape is this grotesque mutilation of two Vietnamese. And his eyes become fixated, centered into it, and he doesn't even allow his sight to follow up to exactly see how tall this pyramid is. Eyes get drawn away. He continues marching, 150 men, 5 to 10 yards apart, single file, through the jungle to the battlefield where they just were. Everything's neatly tied up. That's not supposed to be how they find the bodies. He was there all night long. He watched the smoke. He saw the tracers. Morning time comes. He reports back to his sergeant. They line him up and march him through. And this is what they see. Oddly enough, nobody talks about that. Nobody says anything. I recognize in the hypnotic state that something wasn't right about this pyramid. It was the physical reaction to it. And when we changed the fixation from the mutilation, it dissolved, and he was able to see what he really saw.
Okay, Jim, can you hear us okay now?
Yes.
Okay, your picture looks a lot better. I'm going to let you continue, and I'm going to mute myself and Lori again. So can you go on and describe your friend's experience as well, if you don't mind? And then if you start breaking up, we'll have you back out and come back in. This may be required in order to get the bandwidth, to keep the bandwidth in shape, okay? But go ahead now.
Yeah, I'm reluctant to say my friend's experience. He is very adamant about not coming out with any of this.
Okay. Whoops. Hold on. Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I
am too.
As long as we don't say his name, though, it should be okay. But I don't want you to get into any kind of trouble. So we'll just maybe not address that at this moment. Can you talk about your regression experience? Being sort of under with Lori, and how that sort of felt, and what was your different sort of take on things when you kind of got rid of this, seems to be a screen memory?
Yeah, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what happened afterwards. I did call another veteran who was there. I had the number of one other Marine that was there, so I'll tell you about that. But just very briefly about my regression. The first day with Lori was sort of practice. We practiced getting in. I was never really hypnotically regressed before, so we practiced the first day. The second day, I told Lori some things I was interested in getting regressed about. I didn't tell her on the first day about this unusual experience about Vietnam. And my girlfriend told me, she said, hey, why don't you tell Lori about that? So I gave Lori about 4 different things to regress me about. So I didn't know what she was going to. Am I too loud?
No, you're great. No, okay. You're fine.
So I didn't know what she was going to regress me about. So we go into regression, and then she starts in about, Vietnam, 1969. And I was able to talk to her the whole time. And so I was lucid talking to her, but this, I was getting more, relaxed or deeper, evidently. And so then at one point, Lori and I were talking about this pyramid of bodies and how it really doesn't seem realistic, that a few hours after an all-night battle, these Marines would pile up, have the energy to pile up a 12-foot body, a pyramid of bodies. And then she asked me, did we ever talk about it? And I said, no, actually, no, we never talked about it. So that was unusual. So she regresses me more and more, and then she says, make like you're, I don't know, like you're in a TV camera or somehow removed, but still seeing what's going on. So she said, "What do you see now?" And I saw a couple piles. They weren't 12 foot tall, but they were like, I didn't focus. She said not to focus, but just see the whole picture. And I saw a couple piles, and they were like giant shells. They're like beetle shells. Yeah, sticking up in the air, and it seemed like I seen some legs sticking out of them. And you know, I think I'm not sure. I think I might have felt teary a little bit initially, but the whole experience, it seems kind of like I'm not really emotionally connected with it, and maybe that's because of how Lori introduced me to it. I still don't feel like really emotionally connected yet, and so I really would like to find out from other people or if they had similar experiences. But one thing, after that second session with Lori, which was the main regression, I was thinking, or I was talking with my partner, and we're thinking, was I the only one that seen a 12-foot pyramid, you know, and didn't talk about it? So I called up this one guy. I was in contact with him about 7 years ago, and I said, "Hey, you know, did you see a 12-foot pyramid of dead enemy?" And after that, I said, "Did you walk through with that battle site?" And he says, "Yeah." I said, "What? Did you see that 12-foot pyramid?" He said, "No, I didn't see that." But he said, "I saw a bomb crater, and I saw mutilated NVA, North Vietnamese Army soldiers in it." And he would only tell me about the mutilation after I told him that I see mutilation, because he said he felt like maybe he really didn't see it. And he said after he saw the mutilated soldiers, he didn't look at anything anymore. And so the next day I saw Lori for the third and last time, and I told her about that. And I think she could explain her answer better than I can. So that's my story.
Okay, thank you. That's excellent. Now, I wonder if, you know, since you've been back from Vietnam, have you seen movies about like Starship Troopers? Did you ever see that movie? Did you ever see any other, did you ever read any of these books I've mentioned and things?
I saw Ender's Game.
Okay, but I don't think there's any bugs in there. He's getting prepared to battle them, but I don't think he actually goes to battle, does he? Can't remember.
Well, there's one bug. There's one praying mantis at the end of the movie.
Oh.
It was the queen of the invading forces.
Oh, right.
And he has an encounter with that insect.
Okay. Because did that affect you at all, or did it just seem like a fantasy?
I don't remember being affected. I mean, I don't think that stuff's fantasy, but it didn't trigger anything within me. Right.
And so other than the one person you met who did tell you a story that actually does have some, you know, strong information along these lines, had you ever in your travels ever come across anybody saying anything like this about Vietnam? Maybe we were fighting a different enemy than we realized, any of that stuff?
No.
What about MK Ultra and mind control? Did you feel that you were exposed to, for example, it's said that they used a lot of LSD on a lot of the people. They actually, you know, without them knowing, they were giving them LSD on a regular basis, apparently. This is I just got another testimony from, I'm not going to say who, but somebody who's in a position to know. Did you ever hear about that? Did you feel that you were exposed to that?
Not really. The only thing I would talk about was this movie Jacob's Ladder, where they gave the troops drugs to make them more aggressive.
Right.
And then in the movie they ended up fighting with each other. And this is based on something that really happened. And in my experience, you know, I was always I mean, I felt like everybody was overly aggressive. You know, and you don't hear about the atrocities that much, but I mean, they were there, and just people don't talk about it. But there are a lot of atrocities, and so it's my experience that, I mean, people were more aggressive than they, you know, and then now that I hear about the government may be involved in that, I'm very, very curious.
Okay, what about Agent Orange? Do you have any effects from that? Do you know?
I got some prostate cancer, and they connect that with Agent Orange.
Okay. So what about mentally? Did you have a lot of PTS, what they call PTSD, would you say?
Yeah. In my bio, I said, you know, I had 37 jobs in my first 27 years. And then I went to 9.5 years of biweekly counseling at the VA and the vet centers. And it wasn't just all about Vietnam. It was just being able to keep a job, trying to work at a relationships, jobs. I really had a lot of difficulty being stable.
When, you know, I think it's really wonderful that you wanted to come on the show and that you're very, very brave to do this. I think you know, I put the word out. I asked Vietnam vets to contact me, but nobody did, strangely, other than you. And I guess there was one other, I guess it was your contact, but he didn't contact me directly. Initially, he was kind of willing to somehow talk about it somehow, but he didn't ever want to come forward, I guess, after that. But, you know, it's quite curious. I would be surprised that we don't have quite a few vets listening tonight, for example. I do have a call-in number, and that's part of the show tonight. We're going to take calls. So I want you to stand by. Maybe you can also talk to them if they'd like to talk to you directly. But I do want to ask you if when you look back now, you know, because you tell me, correct me, I think you do some artwork that's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, for the last 20 years, I've been getting into making statues of, like I said in my bio, of Asian mythological animals. So I make dragons and lion dogs out of fiberglass, and I met this guy who was in Cambodia doing something during the war, and he said he saw the statues that were being destroyed by our government there. He said the dragon looked like some of the statues he saw. So I don't know, maybe he was just tugging my chain or what, but
right. So you might have tapped into that, actually.
But I always wondered where the inspiration comes from for my statues.
Yeah, and they're absolutely amazing. I'm sorry I don't have one to show at this moment, but you know, if you want to go, I don't know if you can get a picture or anything like that. There is a share screen on your computer on this, you know, chat. I don't know if you see it at the bottom. It says share screen. If you have any pictures, you can look for them while I talk to Lori. And if you find any, you can certainly put them up and share them with us. I just want people to know what an amazing artist you are. So I do wonder, though, if did you feel that, you know, do you have what we would call missing time and or spaces in your memory where you have blanks?
I don't identify it as that, but I've always had the feeling. And I also had this feeling when I was going to the conference 4 months ago, when I heard you. On my way there, I had this feeling, again, that something was going on in Vietnam that I'm not consciously aware of. And I don't have missing time per se.
Okay. All right, Jim, thank you so much. We'll come back to you as we continue this conversation, okay? I'm going to put you on mute for now, unless you have any parting words you want to say at this moment, that anything that occurs to you want to say before I go over to Lori and get her take on things.
Yeah, I'm just really curious, and not only curious, but I mean, I feel like something's going on, and I mean, I'm really upset, you know, I mean, like pissed off to be used, and yeah, I just feel something was going on, and I feel very upset.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much, really. And just stand by, please. And thank you very much. I'm going to put you on mute here and move over to Lori, and hopefully we can get this going correctly. So Lori, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay, now you're quite quiet again, so if we can turn the volume up for you a little bit, I'll do it at my end. If you can do a little on your end, that'd be good. Go ahead.
Okay, how's that?
Okay, it's a little better, and I'm going to increase it over here a little more. So Lori, you've heard his testimony here. Is there anything you can add about kind of your take on what you thought about, in other words, the MK Ultra, the LSD, these kinds of things? I don't know if you're coming across any other vets who talk about this, also the active Agent Orange. I was told by Captain Mark Richards that there's Agent Yellow, Agent Red, and there's all these other chemicals they tested out in Vietnam. They also have a fire combustible thing that they did where they burned all the forest or jungle, and they tested that out. There's some sensor technology they tried out there, which is also written about in the book that I was reading called Pentagon's Mind, and I forget the title of the author's name. I'll get it, it'll come to me. But so just your thoughts on all of that.
Well, Vietnam wasn't a war that anybody really knew what was going on anyway. There were so many faces to it that were false, and everybody felt the underlying tension. But yeah, this comes up all the time, and there's an underlying anger and a feeling of being betrayed and used. If you remember, there was a draft at that time, and people were sent into this training really possibly against some of their moral codes. And there are some souls where it's just not in them to take the life of another. So they had to be modified in a way to allow their brutality level to be amped up a bit so that they could do things that they wouldn't normally do. And so low doses in supplies of water and other food rations would be the way to go about that. Sometimes they could straight up give you a pill and tell you it's a malaria drug, and you're really not sure what it was, but next thing you know, you can march for 3 days and 3 nights through the jungle without having to eat or sleep. Right. But there are other things that came up in speaking with Jim that certainly were red flags for me. Things that he said that did indicate to me it appeared like missing time. And although that's not his verbiage, but during the session, there was an absolutely huge emotional reaction when the pyramid dissolved. And all of a sudden, when I told them not to focus in on the mutilation, but allow your mind to expand to the bigger picture changed to what was most likely there, which were the exoskeletons of these gigantic beetle-like bugs where some legs were visible as if the bug had just shed its skin and carried on. Due to the fact that there was a battle the night before, there are some logistics that we would want to go over. Number of dead, how many bodies were gathered, what village was there, how many troops were sent in on both sides, the NVAs and our guys. But I remember
also, isn't there the issue of what Jim was saying, how fast, in other words, the battle lasted the whole night, and then the soldiers went up the mountain, and suddenly just appears if this 12-foot pyramid is there. How did they clean the place up so quickly? That seems like it would be a job that would take days. So
and
a time
night.
issue.
So,
yes.
So it was nighttime. They battled all night. So that gave them a very narrow window from when the sergeant would have told the troops, you know, single file, let's go. But one of the things, you know, is if there was a pyramid of bodies, which I don't believe that there were, they would have all saw it. This is, you know, they would have saw it. But what I believe they did was the mutilation aspect of it was so hard for the consciousness to process that they focused in on that and turned away. They shut down. Jim turned away. People don't focus on it. That's kind of the way that you begin to, it's that emotional disconnect to create that screen memory. But when we pulled that focus off of the mutilation and allowed it to expand, it dissolved. The pyramid dissolved, and what he saw were the exoskeleton of the
right. Okay.
bug. Now, I have heard of insects that were huge like that from another Vietnam vet, not in the same type of fight. But Jim also said that he did run into another Marine who had orders to not engage the enemy. Their orders were to, I believe they were headed to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. Their job was to take out the temples. Now that's a whole other side of Vietnam that was going on. You know, when you're ordered not to engage the enemy, but your job as a Marine is to go and, you know, take away these, or destruct the temple. I think that their job was to try to close these portals where these insects were beginning to come through. When we begin to put all of the pieces of the research together on interdimensional beings. And so, Kerry, I just want to say for a second, the way I differentiate extraterrestrial interdimensional is if the interdimension is still in 3D, that the parameter of physics that we're using to measure the spaces in the third dimensional world, then it is parallel. When we say extra, then we're looking at the frequency change. So each parallel universe would still have space, a solar system and so forth, that would allow us to move from one end to the other, but still in the third dimension. So when we move out of that third dimension, beyond that, that's when we're out past the big Virgo cluster into deep space. I think that is kind of where I'm going. Still haven't got it all figured out. I'll be the first to admit that. But I figured out enough that I couldn't ethically, with integrity, publish what I believe, because I were calling them space aliens. And they're, to me, that's just not appropriate anymore. So I just wanted to clarify that. But so yeah, we did see all of these different faces of Vietnam. And so I think the mission is not at all what people were told. But then on stateside, outside of Vietnam, during Vietnam, there were other things happening in the communities to change behavior through music and drugs that the CIA definitely had their hands in. Even bands such as the Grateful Dead. A lot of these bands were promoted with the government intentions to take masses of our young people and sway their thinking to the direction that was going to either keep them tuned in and dropped out of protesting. So all of the people that were originally protesting that got diverted into, you know, the summer of love and stopped doing what they were doing. And the CIA was more influential in that behavior down at Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco than I think people realized. They were infiltrated that scene. And we've had other people actually talk quite a bit about that. But Vietnam vets who went there, they have a dual anger, okay? One, you know, they had to do things that might not be within their compass. They were sent, not everybody enlisted. And then to find out that there's any manipulation to your mind or to manipulate the entire thing, it leaves anybody angry because it takes you out of a position of power, puts you in a place of disempowerment where you're a tool for the use of something else. But lots of people cited UFOs in Vietnam. That was not an unusual thing. The problem was the guys were threatened with a $10,000 fine, a dishonorable discharge, and other things if they were to talk about the UFOs. I mean, if they weren't UFOs, why did they have a code word for them?
Right. Absolutely.
I can't hear you now.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for all of that. I think it's really important that we have so many different ways of looking at all of this. And I think there's a way to balance these windows, which I can't quite get to. You know, I'm supposed to be able to get more than one person on the screen at a time. So I was just trying to do that. Don't know why it's not working. Okay, so for whatever reason. Anyway, so what I wanted to say about all this is that I had somebody call me, and I've got a story that I want to share with you guys and see your reactions, because it actually pertains to this in a very strange way. And it's a story about what is in essence a terrible thing that happened in Vietnam and how the government treated the information. So apparently there is somebody who went to this place, went to Vietnam, and who disguised herself, and she had quite a bit of money and the means to do so. She was working there for a long time, and then she apparently went back in 1994 and said that they still had 140 American prisoners that were prisoners at this prisoner of war camp. So that this is many years after the Vietnam War, and that they were still were not releasing them, which is completely bizarre, and that they came back to America to tell the State Department and et cetera, and that they told them to shut up, and basically they were told that their children would be killed if they went public with that story. So there was at least 140 American prisoners who were just left to vegetate in Vietnam after the war in a prison camp. The other thing was that this person stumbled on, and this is, of course, we don't have a way of validating this testimony, so I'm relating it for what it's worth, and I cannot say if it's true or false, but it's quite interesting. And apparently this person has, according to the person who told me the story, so third person, like, you know, no reason to lie, and in fact has been very affected by this story all their life. They went there and they discovered, it sounded like an underground place, a crypt of dead American soldiers that were, some of them quite young apparently, but it was skeletons and skulls. And there was 250 victims. I don't know why they knew the number. And again, they were told not to reveal that it was just like a pile of, a crypt of bones, nothing but bones. And the other thing is that I was told by another party that they had chemical weapon guns that they were not allowed to tell, that they used in Vietnam. So chemical weapon guns, and they could put a whole city to sleep with it. So they would then put the city to sleep for 36 hours. And that would mean every living thing in the city they said sort of, the humans would get into like a fetal position and apparently have some convulsions, but then they would go to sleep for 36 hours and not wake up. So, you know, we're doing this with Vietnam vets, or we happen to invite those, but obviously if you lived in Laos, Cambodia, or you still do, and Thailand even, you know, we're talking about near Angkor Wat, you know, this kind of thing, then you might know things about these portals. You might know more about Angkor Wat. So please do contact me at Kerry@projectcamelot.tv if you're listening to this and watching. because obviously you would have a story to tell. The other thing is that I'm also going to open the open lines shortly here, but I also want to give both of you a chance to respond to what I've just said. So I'm going to mute myself, and first we'll bring Lori on. And so Lori.
Wow, Kerry, you know, being able to knock a city out for 36 hours, you know, having that type of technology back in the 60s, that's quite amazing. But it does, you know, when people begin to relay stories, there's all these gaps of information. You know, actually Jim relayed at one point, after hours of this battle going on, that all of a sudden, and not in his normal way of being, just felt tired. And so I asked, I said, oh, so did you, you know, like nestle into a tree, get comfortable, you know, and fall asleep in your helmet sort of thing? And he said, no, I just laid down on the ground, ear to the ground, and just slept. That, to me, had a red flag going in my head. That did not seem right to me at all. I wasn't able to get anything further on it, but it was one of the notes that I had made during the session that really stood out, that seemed like odd behavior for a Marine to do who was sent. And I believe the mission was, Jim was out in the jungle that night, and if the enemy were to come, he would go back, report to the sergeant, they would move the line, sort of thing. I believe it was something to that nature. I'm not a military expert, but certainly that behavior sounded odd, and that was a red flag. And so you would all of a sudden, you just lay down and go to sleep, not even take cover, not even get into just, so something doesn't seem right there.
Okay, yes, I agree with you. I'm sorry to the person who is trying to get in, actually.
Can't hear you.
Okay, hold on one second. Sorry to the person who is trying to knock on this room. We do want to let callers in, but they're going to be coming into a different room. And so, because I didn't think that, you know, there's issues when you let somebody on, unless I could turn off their video, and I don't know if I could manage that. So I don't know if we can manage to bring the person in on the same, you know, video. If I have to, I will, I guess. But I'm trying to make sure there's no kind of legal issues that we come across in having this kind of a call-in show. So when you said, Lori, you were talking about basically the idea that they fell asleep and that they would have weapons. So it would be interesting to hear from Jim about whether he was aware or had memories of weapons that supposedly didn't exist, and also of perhaps villages that were asleep when they went through them, or anything of that nature, if he remembers anything like that. So I'm going to bring him on here, if you don't mind. So Jim, go ahead. Hi.
Hi. But yeah, the only thing I could respond to was that incident with myself that Lori said I fell asleep. And that was when that battle was going on the nearby mountain. And I thought it was unusual that my company put me by myself out in the jungle in between our two mountains. So I was a one-man listening post, and my job was to click on the radio if the enemy was coming. So, I thought it was unusual that I was watching this battle going on for quite a while, and I thought it was unusual that I went to sleep. And actually, I was kind of ashamed of myself that I went to sleep during a battle. I thought maybe I was so afraid that I went to sleep. That was my rationale. So I mean, it's nice to hear Lori bring up that point. I can maybe look at it from a different angle. As far as all the other, I don't have any experience with sleeping villages or, but I mean, if there are POWs or, you know, I'm sure we've heard about that for years, and it goes back to the Korean War. And even, I don't know, I think possibly World War II, we've left people behind. But I run across a lot of people that know some things, and they say, well, it's better to leave it all behind. Life is so much better if we don't bring this stuff up. And I believe it's time for this stuff to come out. I believe, you know, we're going to be much freer if we can start bringing this stuff out.
I agree. Actually, what I'm going to do is I had to start a new room. So if you're listening to this and you want to come on and ask a question, or you want to share a story, I'm going to do that now. I'm going to let people in, and then they can also ask my guests questions as well. So so thanks, Jim, for that. And what I'm going to do is mute you again, and I'm going to try to get these windows a bit more balanced. That's better. So now if you want to come on, you have to go to appear.in// Vietnam 3, because I had problems with Vietnam 2. So it's the number 3 after Vietnam. So just type in it's http appear.Vietnam 3. So that's the, see if I can copy the link also and put it in the chat. So yeah, I guess that's what it seems to have bounced me out. I don't know why. Oh, what a pain. Okay. So if anybody wants to ask a question or say anything, please do come forward, and hopefully we can bring you on. So I'm looking to see. Okay, well, I guess there's nobody coming into the room, so I'm gonna see if I can get, okay, hold on, yeah.
I'm trying here.
Hi, okay, go ahead. Lori, did you have something?
Yeah, I was saying that I actually am getting some text messages right now. People saying that they're trying to get into the room, and they're denied entry.
Okay, there is a way you knock, but I think they might be going into the old room. So make sure tell them to go to the appear.in Vietnam 3, the number 3. Make sure that's what they're trying to get into. And I am trying to sign in here.
Yeah, so yeah, there are some people trying to fit in, but I just said that. Hopefully that'll help.
All right, so we'll see what happens.
It's strange though that, when, Jim would talk to vets, that they would say, that's really best left in the past, kind of let sleeping dogs lie. Sort of a very unusual thing, but it makes me believe that it's too difficult for them to process, and it's for them, maybe it is better left under the rug.
Okay, so I guess the person who's going to come in here has to turn, I guess I have to tell people, it's that old thing with Art Bell where you tell people they have to turn off their audio on the show, because otherwise you're going to get a feedback loop. Does that make sense, everyone? So, So let me say that as well. I'm sorry, this is just not that easy.
Yeah, so,
Okay, well, anyway, I'm going to let somebody in and see if this works now, so bear with me.
yeah, so,
Okay, well, anyway, I'm going to let somebody in and see if this works. Okay, that's my end. Okay, go ahead. Can you talk a little louder? Yeah, I think I can hear you. Go ahead.
All right. I actually have something to say, and then I have two questions. Number one, your YouTube chat, you need to get moderated.
Yeah, we probably have tons of trolls. I'm sorry for that. Just basically, if you see a troll and they're, being rude, just say troll, and put it in caps, and I'll try to basically, block them, because there are so many assholes out there. I can't believe.
Yeah, I have a question for the guy, the Vietnam vet. I forget his name.
Right, Jim.
Jim, yeah. Do you know what area of Vietnam you were at?
What area of Vietnam? Okay. Hold on. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I was up in I-Corps, Quang Tri province, right along the DMZ. This area that we went to we went to out of Cam Lo, and we hiked up into the mountains. And I believe that area was called Mud Ridge.
It was called what? Can you say that again, Jim? It was called what ridge?
Mutters Ridge, Mutters.
Okay. Could you hear that caller? Mutters Ridge.
Yes, give me a second.
Okay. I guess the caller's having some kind of issue.
I'm still here. I'm stopping in. Can you hear me?
Yeah. So did you hear the answer?
Yeah, I heard.
Did you have another question?
Yes. The pyramid. This isn't the first time I've heard about pyramids of Viet Cong bodies being shaped like that. Do you know, I guess I don't know if I can answer that. Do you know the name of your, commanding officer? I guess I don't know if you can guess, you get their names out.
Jim, do you want to answer that question? You don't have to, but it's up to you.
No, I was in that unit for about 4.5 months. Our commanding officer, I don't know, he was kind of a crazy lieutenant. I didn't know his name. He was kind of a crazy guy. One time we found some NVA weapons, Chi-Coms, and he was crazy enough to play with those, shoot, lob those Chi-Coms and see if they exploded. I mean, they're really an unreliable thing. So I mean, this guy, if you were in that same unit, that's all I can describe him as. He was kind of a young, crazy guy.
Oh, so did you ever get up close to looking into his eyes?
I didn't. I mean, I was in trouble with him, but I don't remember looking into his eyes.
All right, because what you described happening to you, I've heard about that happening during World War II with some of the Japanese soldiers during the Nanking incident. I got a lot to say, but I don't want to take too much time.
Well, does it relate to specifically to portals in Vietnam, and does it relate to beings from other basically insect kinds of beings or anything of that nature?
not insects, but what he's saying, it sounds like it's some type of possession. I've heard that it's not like what most people go through that when they talk about like they're possessed by a ghost or anything or evil spirit. But what he said, what he described happened to him. I've heard that before. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much, caller. I'm sorry, because I need to, there's another person waiting. I'm going to try to let them in. All right. If you do think of another question or whatever, we don't have a lot of time for the guests, for other people to sort of go off topic. So I don't want to do that too much, if you don't mind.
All right.
All right. Come back to us if you think of something else. Okay.
All right.
All right.
That's
Thanks.
enough. That's a question.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna have to. All right. There's another caller coming in. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Okay, caller, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing?
We're
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I want to talk to. Is his name Jim?
Yes, his name is Jim.
Yeah, Jim. When I was growing up, I had a good friend of mine who was a Vietnam there, and I guess they said he was a Green Beret. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure. But he came back from Vietnam on leave, and we were driving down the highway, and he just ran a guy off the road. So he gets out, does all this karate stuff to the guy, and it's so quick and fast, and he about beat this guy to death. He told him to get back in the car, and so he left. Well, anyway, probably 2 weeks later, he shot his dad and killed him. Now, he was relieved from service under, what do they call that, honorable discharge. And my question is, because he had a weird personality, and he told me he went into camps at night where they jumped out of airplanes and went in there and would kill people while they were sleeping. Didn't matter if they're man, woman, kids, you would annihilate them. And walked away, and they'd use knives, whatever, to keep it quiet so nobody would hear them. And there's a lot of more on this, but he had a different attitude. And his attitude was he would be fine until you said something. And I'm not sure really what it would be, but it would upset him to the point he'd want to actually maybe beat you or kill you. I don't know what. But something was going on with programming of people over there, and he was one of them. And unfortunately, he died a few years ago, and we won't talk about that. But my question is, do they have a lot of people, or did they, or do they, or whatever, in Vietnam that they actually programmed to carry out missions that they probably wouldn't remember, but in their mind, it was in there, and it caused them in reality to flip out, just go ballistic.
So, Jim, thank you for your question, caller. I'm going to mute you so we don't have feedback while Jim answers it, okay?
Okay.
So hopefully, we were having a lot of feedback on his end. Jim, you heard his question?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I don't. What I know about that is what I've read about the Phoenix program, which was an assassination program, and there were a lot of our special ops soldiers that were trained killers, and they'd go out killing at night. So let's see, I didn't encounter that, but I'll just repeat what I said before, that there's just a lot of aggression, and that you wouldn't expect from people, and including myself. I'm guilty myself. So you know, I don't know, I don't maybe need to go into it, but it's widespread. That aggression is widespread, and you wonder, you know, were we assisted with that aggression from our government by drugs, injections, whatever? So I mean, I'm really curious. So thanks for your call.
Okay. Caller, did you hear the answer there? Could you hear that?
Excuse me?
Were you able to hear the answer?
Yes, I was. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
All right. Just want to say that that's interesting because actually for more than one reason, because he said they were shooting them. The guy he was talking about went out and shot people when they were sleeping. So that actually begins to lend some interesting information to the whole idea that they might have put villages to sleep in order to kill them. That's another thing. But the trouble is that there is sort of a dichotomy going on here, because you cannot say that they weren't seeing an enemy in the North Vietnamese. Actually, they were carrying guns. They were involved. They were supposedly the enemy. Little kids were, you know, seen as the enemy. You know, there's all those pictures of people being injured in Vietnam and so on, and killed. So regular people were killed, along with this other scenario that seems to be going on maybe simultaneous to everything that we're beginning to find out about, right? So you've got two things going on. And I do want to say, this is something that a lot of people need to be aware of, that this is still going on, only now it's going on in the Middle East. And that, of course, I've been getting this testimony again from Mark Richards saying that in the Middle East, what you have are the exact same thing happening. They're destroying the monuments. ISIS's job, they're actually getting paid by basically what appears to be the US government or the coalition to go out there into these areas like Palmyra and destroy the temples. Again, destroying the temples. The reason? Because the temples have vortexes. They have stargates. And so they're destroying the sites of the Stargate, in theory, possibly as part of the cover to then close the Stargate at the same time. I don't know what opens and closes a Stargate. I know that I've done this work with SHEAHAN. We've opened vortexes, we've opened Stargates. Humans can do this. So it's just quite as easy, I'm sure, to close them, but I'm not sure how you do it. So I know that if I had Duncan Afinian, he would probably be able to address this, because he was also a psychic super soldier, and that's the kind of person that would know what I'm talking about here. But in the Middle East, they are also fighting what is called the reptoids in that case. So the reptoids have underground bases under these cities in Iraq and Syria, and apparently are working with some of the Iranians. And this is also part of the war. So at the same time that they're fighting the human side, and you're having human refugees, et cetera, you've got this other war going on simultaneously, and the one war seems to be covering for the other war. So it's very interesting. It's not that different from what we're living in here just on planet Earth in general. In other words, we are living in simultaneous realities. There are plenty of people being abducted every night by various ETs, call them what you will, and having these experiences, waking up in the morning and going to work like nothing happened. So there's all kinds of stuff going on. We're having, I know of a person who was killed, the man who used to have this website called ipod.org. He was an ex-DEA agent. I met with him. He was filming the war above LA, the battles between ships. There's a lot of evidence that the chemtrails have been hiding, creating a cloud cover to hide the battles going on at night above our heads, in our cities even today. So that doesn't mean we're fighting all aliens or ETs or whatever you want to call them, but some of them we're definitely having battles with. Our militaries are fighting them. Some they are working with. And it's, of course, a huge story. So just want to throw that out. Again, Jim and or Lori, do you want to address any of what I've just said? Either one?
I think I would, yes.
Okay.
As far as the aggression being amplified in Vietnam, we're looking at more than one way of that being done, psychotropic hallucinogen drugs, but also archon energy, the extraterrestrial parasitic entity that can amp up that negativity. So that is quite the possibility. The archons are said to be kind of spider-like in a way. They can't cause somebody to be negative, but they can take that situation and turn it up to 1,000 if it only registers a 1 or a 2. So that could create increased aggression. I don't think our men battled each other. I don't think they were out of control, but a lot of that falling asleep stuff just at the wrong time, you know, does seem that there might have been something else going on other than just things like Agent Orange. Yeah, everybody was the enemy. Pregnant woman was the enemy, but they had reasons for this. But again, 2 wars were happening. One, not engage the enemy, go and take out these temples where we believe are vortices. And so we can look at the times. Yeah, every war that we've ever had, they've engaged some type of UFO, whether it was in the Second World War where they referred to them as Foo Fighters. Mm-hmm. It was always sort of the same thing. And I believe it was General Brown who said that in a press statement with CBS, NBC, ABC, made a press statement in 1969 saying that there were 2 distinct battles with aliens. And that didn't make it onto the 6 o'clock news. I mean, it just goes to show you how deep the deception is. And if they don't want it on your TV, it's not going to be there. It doesn't matter that a general came forward and said this, and said it in a press conference. What happens? Nothing. What we get on the news is something irrelevant. But it's a mass manipulation, and it is the mind control, and they've been doing this for some time, and I'm sure a lot of it is archon energy. Absolutely.
Very good point. Absolutely, very good point. I do want to say that someone in the chat is mentioning chemtrails, and there is also, from what I understand, there is chemtrails started. I think her name is Annie, the author of Pentagon's Brain. I think it might be Annie Jacobson. Anyway, and she has been talking about the chemtrails started in Vietnam. They started creating that technology that's documented through DARPA, or what was originally called ARPA and then became DARPA. And someone in the chat is mentioning this. So there's no doubt that they were creating the chemtrails, maybe again as a cover for what they wanted to conduct above people's heads, for incoming craft, etc., things of that nature, battles with other things. So anything you want to add to this, Jim?
Just something that's not entirely, well, yeah, it's somewhat related. I just heard a story from somebody I know, a Vietnam veteran. He was a helicopter and periodically they would take these special ops teams that had red knapsacks on them, and they would drop them off in the mountains, and then they'd come back in a few days and pick them up, pick up the ops team. But when they came back, the top of the mountain would be gone. So he called it nuclear weapons.
Wow.
That's the story. But so the connection might be that radiation possibly, affects the local life. I don't know. We were recently in Dulce, and they talk about huge rabbits and animals that are very large, and they've been, they link that to the atomic testing in New Mexico, to the radiation they've been receiving over the years, and they have a lot of large animals up there that are unusually large. So that's just a small point, but.
Okay. Interesting. There are lots of questions in the chat coming up here. I'm going to see if I can read them. Some of the people just wanted to text their questions in via our chat room, which is the normal way we do it. So it looks like that somebody says they think there are telepathic messages being sent to Lori and Jim. That's just what they're saying, for what it's worth. I don't know if either one of you wants to respond to that.
From who?
I'm not sure who. They don't specify who. I'm not sure why they are saying that. Oh, I guess they're asking, are there major telepathic messages being sent to the two of you? I mean, that's kind of like a general question, and I will say that everyone gets telepathic messages all the time. We're senders and receivers. So, but aside from that being the point, do you guys feel that you're getting, I guess might be the underlying question, do you feel that you're getting telepathic information sent to you about this particular subject?
Go ahead, Laurie.
I don't feel like I'm getting any telepathic information being sent to me, but I'm wondering, does your caller or questioner mean, do we feel that we're victims of a psychotronic attack through sonar or ALF waves or that type of wave where they're sending us information to say? If that's the case, I'd like to say that no. Once again, I don't think that either one is happening. I am able to differentiate between my own thoughts and thoughts that may be trying to enter my mind. 37 years as a meditator has taught me how to recognize my own voice. And in this age of technology where we have voice-to-skull transmissions and all types of other sonar, microwaves, radio waves, psychotronics to make people change their brain waves and manipulate their behavior, I think it's very important that people understand their own thoughts, their own mind, and begin to learn how to control it. Because if you're not controlling your own mind on a regular basis, there's a very good chance something or somebody else is doing that. So I'm wondering if that person feels that maybe they're receiving telepathic messages.
Okay. So we'll put that out there. Jim, do you want to say anything about in relation to what was just said, or the question?
Yeah, I wish I was getting whatever messages. I would like to get more information on this subject. I don't really feel I have much to give here, and I'm really hungry for more a clearer picture.
Okay, another question in the chat is directed at you. Do you feel that you've been threatened for speaking out about this topic, Jim, at all?
No.
This is your first time, isn't it?
Yes.
So I'm sorry to say, but stay tuned. Okay, so hold on one second here. I don't know, somebody's making a comment, I guess, something about ex-military and not feeling that they can be trusted. I'm not sure that's the case. I don't think you can make blanket statements about anyone. I think that's very dangerous, but let's see, anything else here? So I guess someone who wasn't listening didn't get the understanding of the one was the screen, what apparently Lori has figured out from your regression. I don't know if Jim, if you completely agree with this, but the idea is that the pyramid of bodies was a screen memory. When it dissolved and revealed these, what are called exoskeletons of bugs. You know, these bug bodies, so beetles, you called them, with, I guess, some legs, you know. So is that exactly, you know, for the person who didn't quite understand that, I guess?
Yeah, that's
what you're
my
saying.
Understanding now, okay, after the regression.
All right. I don't know, someone's saying, does REM sleep have anything to do with this? I don't know if there's anything there. Do you have anything to say about REM sleep, Jim?
I don't know what it is.
Okay, that's a certain period of sleep. Lori, do you want to address that?
It's a period of sleep where we have the opportunity to have lucid experiences, or some people even leave the body at that point. Any REM is a deep delta theta brainwave, and it is an altered consciousness because you're unconscious, more in a sleep state than in awake. Conscious mind is turned down. And so I'm wondering why they're asking about that.
I'm not sure. Okay, but they perhaps can answer in the chat. One thing I would say is REM stands for rapid eye movement. So you can look that up on Google. I think the writer might do that.
We see that. No.
Go ahead, Lori.
In hypnosis, that's one of the things that we're looking for, is the rapid eye movement, the REM. It gives us an indication of what brainwave the subject is operating from. We're able to see that through different physiological reactions. Often it's swallowing, the rapid eye movement, and then we're listening for gurgling sensations. At the same time, as a person is regressed and they're in that hypnotic state, we're constantly scanning the body to see what's twitching, what's being triggered, what being suppressed. And we notice that all of these things come through REM and other signs in the body. We indicated all of them.
Okay. Another person is saying Vietnam officers know the truth but are scared to come out. Obviously, they're scared to come out about all of this. I don't know any officers or ex-officers from Vietnam. I wonder, Jim, do you happen to know any ex-officers from Vietnam?
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I'm going to look for more questions in the chat. Again, I'm trying to balance out these windows, which there's a way to do it, but I don't know. It doesn't. Sometimes it seems to work, and sometimes it just doesn't. I don't know why. All it does is switch them at this moment. Just looking to see if there's any other questions here that might pertain to our subject matter a little more directly.
Somebody sent me a question.
All right, go ahead.
They're asking, do I know of, or do any of us know of any programs that are available, like hypnotherapy, where people can find out, Vietnam vets can find out what type of mind screwing has happened to him. Not the word they use. So looks like a Vietnam vet has had some, he believes he's had some buddy messing with his mind and wants to know if there is a regular hypnotherapy program for that. I don't know if the VA offers anything like that. Listen, I know that huge treatment centers for drug and alcohol addiction all use hypnotherapy as a recovery program. Hypnotherapy is totally instrumental in all of those areas. So VA is not doing that yet, and I'm imagining that they know exactly how effective it is. The last thing they want is for everybody to be spilling forth the secrets that they went to such means to suppress. But the thing is, the truth has a way of becoming effervescent and bubbling up into the conscious mind. And when we begin to crack that door open, things happen. The mind begins to fall back into that narrow pathway, pushes through to the truth, because what's happening, there's an emotional catalyst, a vortex of energy within our own self that's pushing for the truth. Like this one is implying that they feel like there's been some type of mind suppression. They just can't put their finger on it. I just also want to say, Kerry, I heard a story today. I was talking to somebody, and they said that they were talking to a contractor, that's a government contract that creates the different HARP facilities. They're saying that one of what they asked what they were doing, and he said stealing energy from other dimensions. That is one of the main things that HARP is doing. They're totally working along the same path as the chemtrails. And I did spend a couple of years researching chemtrails and finding out that, yeah, a lot, although they do consist of the chemicals that we're aware of, aluminum, beryllium, and so forth, that they do have an effect on us and our memory and on our brain directly. They carry nanofibers, fungi, all sorts of things have been tested in the residuals that fall from the chemtrails. But most importantly, they are hiding battles. I'm going to tell you, I witnessed what I thought was a fight between two high altitude craft, creating zigzag maneuvers like I had never seen before. And I instantly picked up the telephone, called NORAD, called the military bases here, asked them if they got anything on radar. Something is definitely happening. I filmed it. I went out and filmed it, and next thing you know, we had an issue at the house, and all of our equipment, this is back in the 90s, all of our equipment was ruined. All of the pictures were removed, and all that were left were sound. They were tampered with somehow. Very strange, but some of the investigations, we would go out and men would show up in plain clothes out of nowhere, out of literally nowhere. Now, believe me, I was in the middle of nowhere. They would show up and say that they were security. I'd try to ask what type of security, and they never would give me, they only ever said private security. If they would go through my vehicle, a van at the time, pulling out my star maps, pulling out everything that I had circled, what planets moving through constellations and so on and so forth, and look at all of the UFO stuff. So even back, you know, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, continuously, they're influencing the information that we have. All of these decades, the 25 plus years that I've been doing this work, there has been some sort of battle going on, whether it's on the ground or in the skies. There is something happening, and what they want us to do is direct our external energy into the black magic monitors of cell phones and monitors and TVs, and all of these things are imbuing upon the consciousness of humanity a specific belief system. But when we can sort of shut these things down, and I mean it, they're doing it not just through sound and light waves, but through imagery that's dropping right into the subconscious mind. And it is legal now. When I became a hypnotherapist, only 12 to 14% of messaging and advertising content was allowed to be subliminal. In 2014, that limit was removed. And so there is a direct assault on the consciousness of humanity. What they're doing is basically trying to hack us. The chemtrails, the UFO phenomena, everything is tied together. And as long as they keep us looking in all of these different directions, it's going to be very difficult for us to put the whole piece together. But I suspect that there is some type of terraforming happening, that some type of one of these other dimensional entities would very much like to live in our third dimensional reality, and that we need to be able to fight either for our right to live here or move into the higher dimensions of the etherics through the ascension process, expanded consciousness, tapping into our higher spiritual energy. That also might be under attack right now. And that's kind of what's happening. Humanity's spirituality and their consciousness is being hacked through chemical and other type of interference, alpha waves, Glen waves, sonar, all of the ones that we mentioned before. Psychotronics happens all the time. I was attacked one night while typing on my laptop on a chapter on psychotronic warfare, and all of a sudden I did get a message into my head, and it said, "You have no business writing on psychotronics." I paused, my fingers lingered over the keyboard for a moment while this message moved into my mind, and then I dismissed it and thought, well, so who does? What is there, like Psychotronics 101? I don't remember seeing that in school. So I thought, well, who does have business writing about it? Why not me? And so I continued, and it took another attack, and that one began to seep in, and for about 5 minutes, I was under the influence of a negative self-defeating thought. And I was able to know, and then again, I dismissed it and thought, wait. Not in a million years would I think that. And knowing yourself, know your own mind, it can't be any more important word in this millennium, because that's what's under attack.
Sure.
All these things are an avenue to it.
Absolutely. Okay, now we had somebody who was asking how many Vietnam vets have been affected, and I have to say that's just, that would be just speculation on our part. No one can get an exact number, but I would, one could easily say all. So, you're not going to go to war without being affected anyway. That's sort of a no-brainer. But specifically this story that we're trying to kind of get to the root of, that's really what we're doing here, and trying to get the clues, follow the clues. So we've been going for a while. I'm probably going to close this down. I'm not seeing any big questions coming along. If I miss some, go ahead and try to put them in there. I think someone's asking whether the POWs were food for maybe those beings. You just don't know. We don't know enough about it. I can say the story from Mark Richards. You should listen to my 6th interview with Mark Richards. That's all on my website. It's linked also under this particular show tonight. It's on the same page. So my website is projectcamelotportal.com, and you can go there and basically Angkor Wat, they mind controlled the humans into believing they had no water to weaken them. Apparently they had water, a river going through Angkor Wat. And once they did that, then they went in and microwaved them, and then they ate them, according to Mark Richards. So they had amazing technology. I had several whistleblowers who had been telling me that before Mark ever brought this subject up, that there were sort of these beings coming here, insectoid beings, spider beings. John Lear, my latest interview with John Lear, his grandson came forward with a story. He knows nothing about any of this. John has never shared it with him. And he had a meeting with a what is in essence sounded like maybe a cross between a spider being and a praying mantis being, in which he was, treated like a patient on a slab and all this kind of stuff. A little tiny child, of like, I don't know, 4 or 5. You can listen to my John Lear interview to hear more about that. Okay, so parting words. Jim, why don't you go on first here and just any parting words before we close this down?
I don't feel I have anything to add. I just thank you for the opportunity, and it just becomes fruitful. Thank you for being on, Lori. It was great.
Okay, and thank you, Jim and Lori. Parting words.
Just want to say again, also thank you, Kerry, for creating the forum. When people see people like Jim coming forward and going, okay, that didn't feel right, and let me take the next step and seeing what we can do to figure it out, they're going to be able to do that. And so in a way, for Vietnam vets, pioneering the opportunity to find their truth, their authentic self as to what happened, and then become a little bit more empowered with how they want to handle the situation.
Absolutely. Well, the truth shall set you free. I firmly believe those words. So thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for watching. Thanks, Lori and Jim, for being on the show. Thanks for the courage that it takes to come forward, both of you actually, and tell your story and share your truth. And thanks everyone for listening, for the interesting questions, for the ones who were able to get their questions on through that chat room. And this will go onto YouTube. Obviously, you can get in touch with both Lori and Jim, and the information will be on my website for contacting them. You can already go to Lori's website to get a hold of her. Jim, do you have, let's see, an email address that you can give out to people to reach you at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim.SHEAHAN, SHEAHAN @gmail.com.
Okay. Thank you very much. And so good night, everyone. And I'll be back tomorrow during the day, I think it is, with another show. It's going to be quite an interesting show. So stay tuned to ProjectCamelotPortal.com for the details. It has to do with the rave scene and the rave music scene, and the chemicals that were being tested on audiences at that time during that scene, the music scene, and someone who went behind the scenes and was dealing with the intelligence agencies and working for them, coming forward and disclosing. That's tomorrow, so stay tuned. And thanks again for watching.